The fog descended heavily upon Forest Hills, Oregon, silencing the world and blurring the outlines of all it enveloped. It was a morning where headlights vanished into the fog, and each breath transformed into a ghostly mist the instant it escaped your lips. AVA Collins tightened her fleece against the crisp morning air as she sprinted down the winding trail of Silver Pine Park, her familiar path echoing with the rhythm of her heartbeat. In the stillness of the world, the only sounds that pierced the quiet were the sharp crunch of her running shoes meeting the frost-bitten ground and the haunting caw of a crow echoing in the distance. In that fleeting moment, just before the town began to breathe and stir, she discovered a profound tranquility that enveloped her like a soft, comforting blanket. After years spent navigating the tumultuous waters of Child Protective Services, Ava had come to treasure each fleeting moment of silence. It aided her in silencing the chaos, the late-night emergency calls, the case files that perpetually lingered, the children's eyes that bore the weight of too many years. Yet today, something intruded upon that fragile stillness. A sound too rhythmic to belong to the natural world, too insistent to be dismissed. A barking, sharp and relentless, echoing from deep within the shrouded mist. She came to a halt, her breath catching in the frigid air. The relentless barking persisted, echoing through the stillness of the night. It was not the aimless barking of a restless companion. It resonated with a haunting urgency, a rhythm steeped in dread. Ava paused for just a heartbeat, then diverted from the well-trodden path, drawn irresistibly toward the origin of the sound. The frost-laden underbrush clutched at her leggings as she pressed onward, branches raking at her arms like the grasp of hidden hands. The barking escalated, a cacophony of desperation, until, in a flash, it emerged, a German shepherd, grimy and limping, one ear gone, a jagged scar marring the fur above his left eye. His chest rose and fell with the weight of fatigue, yet he continued to bark, relentless, until she drew nearer. He spun around, darting a few paces forward, then halted, casting a glance over his shoulder before barking once more. "You want me to follow you?" Ava whispered, her heart pounding, as a surge of adrenaline washed away her confusion. The dog guided her toward a gnarled oak tree, standing sentinel in a hidden clearing at the park's edge. The scene froze her in place. At the foot of the tree, a small girl, scarcely 7, lay curled up like a fragile creature in distress. Her wrists were bound to the sturdy trunk with chains of rusted iron, and a padlock held fast the loop around her ankle. Her blonde hair lay in disarray, matted and grimy, her lips a chilling shade of blue. When her eyes finally opened, they revealed a haunting emptiness, as if the weight of the world had already pressed down on her fragile youth. Ava fell to her knees beside her. "Oh, my God!" She tore off her running jacket and enveloped the child in its fabric, her hands trembling as she searched for her phone. Her voice quivered as she dialed 911, yet her thoughts surged with a fierce determination. She had been forged in the fires of turmoil. This was a nightmare beyond anything she had ever faced, yet her instincts surged to the forefront. "She's alive," Ava said urgently to the dispatcher. "She's freezing, chained to a tree in Silver Pine Park. We require an ambulance, immediately." As she lingered in the silence, she murmured gentle reassurances, yet the girl remained unresponsive to her words. The German shepherd settled beside the child, instinctively drawing near, enveloping them both in a cocoon of warmth and unwavering loyalty. Ava gazed at him, her eyes wide with incredulity. He remained by her side, a sentinel in the shadows, perhaps even a savior in her darkest hour. When the paramedics finally burst onto the scene, their lights cutting through the thick morning fog, The little girl remained silent, her lips sealed tight as if guarding a secret too heavy to share. Yet her gaze remained fixed on Ava, unwavering. Her eyes latched onto her savior as if he were her only hope, her delicate frame quaking beneath the ill-fitting coat. The paramedics sprang into action, their hands deftly slicing through the chain, lifting her with utmost care onto the stretcher. A scene charged with urgency and tension. She remained utterly silent, even as the cold metal broke loose from her ankle. "It appears her name is Maddie Lane," one of the officers informed Ava after conducting a swift inquiry. 4 days had passed since she was reported missing. Her stepfather, a real estate executive, plastered across every news outlet. Ava's gaze lingered on the girl's ashen face as they carefully placed her into the ambulance. The headlines had begun to meld into one another, each one echoing the same tragic tale of another lost child and a family shattered by despair. Yet now it bore a name, a visage, flesh and blood, and the weight of trauma pulsing softly beneath a silver blanket. And the dog? He stayed motionless until the wail of sirens receded into the night. Then, without a whisper, he turned and limped back into the shrouded mist. "Hold on!" Ava shouted, moving closer. Yet he had already slipped away, dissolving into the fog like a specter that had completed its mission. The officer beside her let out a slow, deliberate shake of his head, a gesture heavy with unspoken words. "You," the dog said, "brought you to this place?" "Yes," he barked, his voice cutting through the tension as I fell in step behind him. He was certain of her location. "A stray. You think?" Ava remained silent. There was an undeniable essence about him that suggested he belonged, not lost in the world like a wandering shadow. He carried himself with the weight of a protector, wounded, indeed, yet driven by intent. Like a soldier stripped of his uniform, yet bound to the echoes of his final command. She lingered in the thickening mist, long after the medics and police had departed, a solitary figure shrouded in the remnants of chaos. Within her chest, a tumultuous shift occurred, an undeniable feeling that this tale was far from its conclusion. The events that befell Maddie Lane were no mere coincidence. There was no doubt about it. Someone had orchestrated this. The shadows whispered secrets of a hand unseen, a presence lurking just beyond the veil of understanding. A child, bound by chains, was left alone at the foot of a tree, the echoes of abandonment hanging heavy in the air. And there was a force, an unseen hand, that would not allow her to fade into oblivion. As the morning sun pierced the lingering fog, Ava glanced back at the trail, her heart weighed down and her mind racing with questions that lingered in the air, unanswered and unspoken. Yet, the singular question that reverberated through her thoughts, time and time again, was this: what could have possibly caused the dog to vanish into thin air? The cold, unyielding buzz of fluorescent lights permeated the emergency room, casting a harsh glow over the scene unfolding within its sterile walls. The walls, drenched in gentle blues and whites, were intended to bring solace, yet they failed to quell the tempest that had shadowed AVA Collins since dawn. Maddie Lane lay ensconced beneath the warmed hospital sheets, her petite form nearly swallowed by the vast expanse of the oversized bed. As the nurses exchanged hushed murmurs about her miraculous survival, the girl's gaze remained hauntingly empty, fixated on a distant realm, far removed from the confines of language. Not a word had escaped her lips. Ava lingered in silence on the vinyl chair beside her, hands gently intertwined, clad in a sweatshirt that carried the lingering scent of crisp air and fallen leaves. Every so often, Maddie's fingers would tremble, clutching the crayon with a fierce intensity as she unleashed a torrent of chaotic drawings upon sheet after sheet of paper. Thick black lines intertwining with jagged shapes and unsettling figures, their mouths marked by menacing red slashes. These were not the innocent scribbles of a child immersed in the joy of imagination. Their cries echoed within her, a cacophony of anguish she dared not utter. Dr. Selina Moore, the pediatric psychologist of the hospital, stood poised in the doorway, her arms crossed, watching intently in quiet contemplation. At just 31, her calm brown eyes held a depth that could anchor even the most tumultuous of gatherings. And when she finally entered, the air shifted around her. She remained silent, her words trapped within her, untouched by the outside world. "Just you," Selina murmured, her voice barely above a whisper as she extended a new folder of intake paperwork to Ava. Such occurrences are rare indeed. In the shadow of trauma, children often retreat into themselves, distancing from the world around them. The connection she forged with you is undeniably genuine. "I was just there," Ava whispered, her voice barely rising above the tension in the air. That dog. Oh, how it stirs the heart and ignites the spirit. A creature of such profound presence. It weaves through the fabric of our lives, leaving an indelible mark upon our souls. Ranger. I believe he remained by her side throughout it all. Selina arched an eyebrow, a flicker of intrigue dancing in her gaze. The dog, you say. Is there still no trace of him? No, Ava declared, her voice steady and resolute. He bolted the moment the sirens pierced the air. As the afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows in the courtroom, Ava stood before the judge, her heart pounding as she sought temporary guardianship. In the midst of the Lane family's unsettling quiet, with Gregory Lane slipping into the shadows and his wife confined to a hospital bed, a victim of what their lawyer described as a panic episode, it fell upon someone to rise for Maddie. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the final signatures were hastily inked. And in that fleeting moment, Ava emerged as the rightful guardian, a title now etched in the annals of their lives. As they made their way back to her modest one-bedroom house on Chestnut Avenue, the autumn light began to wane, slipping away behind the shadowy embrace of the pine-covered hills. Ava set Maddie's backpack down in the corner, a quiet symbol of the days that had slipped away into silence. With a tender touch, she guided the girl to the couch, offering a steaming cup of cocoa, then settled beside her in silence, the air thick with unspoken emotions. There are no inquiries, no weight upon the shoulders. Maddie's fingers brushed against the sketch pad, a silent rebellion against the comforting embrace of the mug. Ava observed the child as they picked up the pencil once more, the lines now sharper, more deliberate, as if each stroke carried the weight of a burgeoning story, a towering figure, a metallic watch catching the light on his wrist, a heavy chain draped across him, a solitary tree standing sentinel. Ava felt a constriction in her chest. With a swift motion, she grasped the page as soon as Maddie released it, scrutinizing every detail with intense focus. The likeness was undeniable. The features were vague, yet the stance, the lavish belt buckle, and the hefty watch all resonated with the images she had encountered of Gregory Lane. Selina had cautioned her against leaping to hasty judgments. Children navigate the jagged edges of trauma in disjointed pieces. Yet Ava had witnessed countless tormented children throughout her tenure in child protection, and she had learned to discern the telling signs. Maddie wasn't conjuring a villain from thin air. She was recalling one from her past. As the clock struck 10, Ava made her way to the kitchen, intent on warming a pot of soup that awaited her. The air was thick with anticipation, each moment stretching like the steam rising from the stove. She had gone without food since the break of dawn, and a nagging feeling told her that Maddie was in the same plight. Yet, as she pivoted away from the stove, a flicker of motion outside the window seized her attention. A shadowy figure, crouched close to the earth, observing intently. With her heart racing, she crossed the threshold onto the porch, her gaze sweeping across the yard. With a sudden burst of illumination, the motion sensor light sprang to life. There he stood, Ranger, the noble German shepherd from the park, a figure of loyalty and strength. His amber eyes locked onto hers, a dance of cautious familiarity unfolding between them. A new wound sliced across his side, and he favored his leg as he moved ahead, each step a testament to his struggle. Ava sank to her knees, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon her. "Hey there, kid. You trailed us, didn't you?" He paused at the brink of the porch, then lowered himself onto the worn wood, a figure caught in the stillness of anticipation. She cast a fleeting look over her shoulder at the living room, where Maddie was nestled tightly under a throw blanket, a picture of vulnerability and warmth. Ava pushed the door open, her heart racing with anticipation. "Step inside, but I warn you, no promises of crimson stains on the rug, understood?" Ranger advanced with a painful gait. He entered quietly, neither growling nor barking, moving with an air of belonging that commanded attention. Ava retrieved a weathered towel from the depths of the linen closet, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed it tenderly against his wound. "It seems that someone went to great lengths to keep you from discovering her once more," she whispered, a hint of intrigue lacing her voice. She was uncertain whether the dog grasped her words, yet the depth in his eyes spoke volumes. Once, he had stood as a shield for Maddie. He refused to yield at this moment. As Ava made her way back to the kitchen to complete the soup, a subtle sound reached her ears, the delicate scratch of pencil on paper. Maddie found herself lost in her drawings once more. As the bowl reached its final state, the girl had turned the last page of yet another chapter. Without uttering a single word, she passed it to Ava. At the bottom of the page, in unsteady block letters, Maddie had scrawled, "He said he'll chain me again if I speak out." Ava's grip on the spoon grew fierce, her knuckles whitening as tension coiled within her. With a steady hand, she set the steaming bowl of soup upon the table, her gaze shifting to the familiar name on her phone. She pressed the call button, anticipation hanging in the air like a thick fog. The moment had arrived to dig deeper and reveal the secrets that the Lane family had concealed. In the dim light of the room, Ranger raised his head, his ears perked, sensing the tension that hung in the air. He stood poised, bracing himself for the unfolding of what lay ahead. The morning air hung heavy with frost as Ava ventured outside to collect the mail, her fingers throbbing with the bite of the cold. Even through the protective embrace of her gloves, Forest Hills appeared to wear a mask of tranquility, concealing the turmoil that lay beneath. Hedges stood like sentinels, meticulously trimmed, while the warm glow of porch lights beckoned from every home. It was a town where friendly waves were exchanged from driveways, and the trust in neighbors ran deep enough to share spare keys without a second thought. Yet Ava had ceased to place her faith in mere facades, not after discovering Maddie Lane bound to a tree in the mist. Amidst the clutter of bills and flyers lay an envelope, its surface bare of any return address, shrouded in mystery, thick, pristine white cardstock. Ava's brow furrowed as she ripped it open, the tension palpable in the still air of the porch. A solitary line, bold and defiant, etched in thick black marker. Cease your relentless pursuit, or you may find yourself stripped of all that you hold dear. Her breath hitched in her throat. There lay the note, devoid of any signature, a mystery wrapped in silence. Yet she felt the weight of its sender's presence, an unspoken truth that resonated deep within her. Someone sought to shroud her in silence, and she hadn't uttered a single word. Within the confines of the kitchen, Maddie lingered at the table, pencil in hand, lost in her sketches, while her plate of oatmeal sat neglected, a silent witness to her distraction. The only sound that filled the air was the gentle scritch of pencil gliding across the paper. Her eyes, ever vigilant, darted to Ava's face upon her entrance, seizing the tension that Ava endeavored to conceal. "Are you all right, darling?" Ava inquired softly, striving to infuse her voice with tranquility. Maddie remained silent. Instead, she pivoted the notebook in Ava's direction. A dark crayon scrawl consumed the page, an untamed burst of chaos and emotion. A massive figure, broad-shouldered and with a face flushed with fury, loomed ominously over a diminutive shape huddled in the shadows of the corner. A gleaming silver band encircled his wrist, unmistakably a metal watch. Ava's eyes had locked onto that very watch, glinting on Gregory Lane's wrist. During the tense press conference when the world first learned of Maddie's disappearance. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows through the sterile corridors, Ava found herself standing before Dr. Selena Moore at the hospital, anticipation mingling with a hint of trepidation for their scheduled session. Selena, youthful yet keenly observant, scrutinized the latest drawings, her jaw clenched in a tight line of determination. "She's exhibiting all the classic signs of PTSD," Selena said softly, her voice laced with concern. "Haunted by night terrors, a constant state of alertness grips the soul, while the weight of masculine presence silences the voice within, invoking a profound stillness that speaks volumes. She recoils at the mere presence of any man who steps into the room, even the nurses." She remains silent. Yet these drawings resonate with the intensity of unvoiced cries. Ava nodded, her jaw clenched in silent resolve. "I believe it's the stepfather." "I feel the same way," Selena responded, her voice tinged with a hint of frustration. "But without any evidence, it's nearly impossible to establish the truth." "We require a scenario, a perilous situation that thrusts her into jeopardy while she is under his watch." Ava had devoted the last 3 nights to meticulously sifting through ancient court records and digital archives, driven by an insatiable need for answers. As the evening deepened, Maddie nestled into her bed, Ranger a steadfast guardian at her side. While Ava found herself drawn back to the glow of her laptop, she plunged into the shadows of Gregory Lane's past. What she discovered sent a shiver down her spine. 8 years prior, he found himself ensnared in a web of accusations. The voice of a woman named Carla Whitman, his ex-wife from a fleeting union in Idaho, echoing the charge of child endangerment. The case had been thrown out due to a lack of evidence, yet the notes revealed a troubling truth. The child involved bore injuries that spoke volumes of confinement. She followed the trail to a secluded town in Montana, her heart racing as she dialed the sole number she had unearthed. Carla's voice trembled with uncertainty at first, but the moment Ava spoke Maddie's name, silence enveloped them. Then, in a hushed, broken tone, she uttered, "He did it again, didn't he?" "What do you mean?" Ava asked, her grip on the phone tightening with each word. He would confine my daughter to the basement for days on end, declared it was retribution. For years after, darkness became her enemy, stealing away her sleep. As I made my way to the police, a chilling threat escaped his lips. He would take her from me. No one would ever believe me. I fled with urgency. Ava felt a tumultuous churn in her stomach. Have you ever brought it to light? Carla let out a heavy sigh, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. I gave it my all. The case was shut tight before it even had a chance to breathe. He possesses an undeniable power and an irresistible charm. They remain blind to what lies beyond. As Ava ended the call, she fixed her gaze on the screen, enveloped in a heavy silence. At last, she possessed the elusive fragment that had long evaded her grasp. A recurring motif. Gregory Lane had walked this path many times before. He would plunge into the depths once more. As the wind howled outside, Ava sat down, her heart racing, to finally put pen to paper for the formal report destined for Child Protective Services. It was essential that it be exact, objective, leave no room for doubt. She meticulously enumerated each detail she could substantiate. The sketches, the manifestations of behavior, the prior accusations of mistreatment, the ominous threats that had come her way, shrouded in mystery. All that exists. She remained oblivious to the sound of the back door creaking open. There was no sound of the first drawer sliding open, nor the gentle chime of metal meeting tile. The sudden crash in the living room sent a shock through her, pulling her from the depths of her thoughts. A lamp lay in ruins, its fragments scattered like forgotten dreams. A resounding thump echoed through the silence. Ava sprang to her feet, the tension in the air thickening as Ranger emitted a low, warning growl from Maddie's room. She dashed into the hallway, her heart racing, only to discover the living room in utter disarray. Cushions strewn about, a chaotic testament to the turmoil within. Cabinets flung wide, shattered frames lay scattered across the hardwood floor, remnants of memories now lost in chaos. A breach had occurred, an unwelcome intrusion into the sanctity of the space, and had shown no concern for silence. In that moment, her gaze fell upon him. Ranger, hunched in the shadows of the hallway, quaking with uncertainty. His breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. His gaze locked onto Ava, filled with a fierce urgency and a need to shield her. His limbs convulsed in a desperate attempt to rise, yet he remained anchored to the ground. "Ranger," she whispered, collapsing to her knees. The acrid scent of chemicals assaulted her senses. He had fallen victim to a drugging. The door to Maddie's room stood ajar, a silent invitation to the secrets within. The chain lock she had always secured lay shattered, a silent testament to the chaos that had unfolded. Yet within, she remained, curled up in the distant shadows of her bed. With her arms encircling her knees, she trembled, her entire being quaking in silent turmoil. Even in a haze of consciousness, Ranger had mustered every ounce of strength to pull himself in front of her door, collapsing there, a silent sentinel against anyone who dared to approach. Ava dialed 911, her fingers shaking with urgency. Though her voice faltered, the words surged forth, defying the silence. "My home has been violated. My dog has been drugged. And the child I'm fostering, someone attempted to snatch her away. The operator inquired if she had any idea who might be responsible for this." Ava hesitated, silence hanging in the air like a heavy curtain. She cast her gaze upon Ranger's lifeless form, then shifted her attention to Maddie's ghostly visage, barely visible beneath the folds of the blanket. "I believe I do," she finally admitted, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "But I need assistance to prove it." The fear had transformed, no longer lurking in the shadows. It had taken residence within her very walls. It possessed an unsettling awareness of her very address. The fog had descended once more by morning, heavy and oppressive, a portent that clung to the air, refusing to dissipate. AVA Collins hardly sipped her coffee, her gaze fixed on Maddie, who knelt beside Ranger on the porch. The dog, despite the lingering limp, had resumed his watchful post, nostrils flaring, ears pricked for the faintest whisper beyond the towering pines. Ava's breath caught in her throat as Maddie's whisper, barely a rasp, pierced the silence with unsettling clarity. "There are additional children, are additional." Ava stood still, her breath caught in her throat. Maddie had remained silent until now. Silence reigned supreme. Yet, in that moment, her cerulean gaze pierced through to Ava's, and her small hand gripped the edge of Ranger's fur as if it were her only salvation. "How many are there?" Ava inquired softly, her voice laced with an undercurrent of concern. Maddie shook her head, her gaze fierce as she pointed to the drawing tightly held in her other hand. Once more, the stick figures emerge. Over 5, all confined within the cold embrace of a room devoid of light, each soul trapped behind unforgiving bars. Ava reached for her phone, dialing Detective Raymond Brooks before the coffee had a chance to cool in her cup. He stood among the rare officers who had not cast aside her instincts with disdain when Gregory Lane, the beloved real estate mogul of Forest Hills, emerged as the prime suspect in the abuse of his stepdaughter. At last, with Maddie breaking her silence, Ava felt an undeniable certainty that they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental. Brooks encountered her at the sheriff's department 2 hours later, her silver-streaked hair hidden beneath a weathered baseball cap, eyes honed by 3 decades of pursuing truths that lingered in the shadows of unsuspecting towns. "I pulled Gregory's property records," he said, flinging a folder onto her passenger seat with a mix of urgency and intrigue. "He possesses a maintenance cabin just beyond the town's edge, a permit for forest management asserted to be intended for hunting purposes. It exists beyond the reach of modern conveniences, devoid of utilities and untouched by the signals of the outside world." Ava's gaze swept over the photographs within, each image a silent echo of the past, whispering secrets only she could hear. An overgrown dirt road stretches ahead, flanked by the remnants of a faded mailbox bearing the name LWW, Real Estate Ventures. It appeared forsaken. That rendered it flawless. They chose not to summon reinforcements. Excessive bureaucracy stifles progress. Countless gazes linger, heavy with expectation. In that pivotal moment, Ava's faith in the machinery of bureaucracy crumbled, shattered by the stark realization that Maddie had been cast aside, lost in the shadows of its indifference. They made their entrance just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The path leading to the house was little more than a whisper of a trail, a tapestry of mud, pine needles, and tire tracks that clung to the earth, refusing to fade away. The house loomed before Ava, its dimensions far more modest than she had envisioned. 2 tails of flaking white paint, shutters dangling in disarray, a satellite dish dislodged from its perch atop the roof. Brooks silenced the roar of the engine. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his hand poised just above his holster, a silent promise of the tension that hung in the air. The front door stood ajar, an invitation to the unknown beyond. Within the confines of the room, A musty odor mingled with a more acrid scent, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Bleach. Freshly employed. The scene was set to appear desolate. Veils of dust sheets draped over the furniture, shrouding memories in a silent embrace. Containers stacked in the pantry. Yet, there was neither refuse nor garments in sight. As if a shadow had glided past moments before their arrival, Brooks discovered the basement door lurking behind the kitchen pantry. The padlock clung tightly, its chain thick and weathered by time, a testament to the secrets it guarded. Yet, Ava's keen eyes caught the fresh scrape marks on the hinges, a telltale sign of something amiss. It had been opened not long ago. "Step back," Brooks commanded, the sharp snap of the chain echoing as he wielded the bolt cutters from his trunk. The door groaned as it swung ajar, releasing a chilling gust of stale air that filled the room with an unsettling presence. They plunged into the abyss, flashlights slicing through the oppressive darkness. And there it stood. A moment suspended in time. 5 beds, their frames forged from cold metal, worn, discolored mattresses, a solitary drain, nestled in the heart of the cold cement floor, beckons with an air of mystery. Hooks cling to the walls, waiting in silence. A small heap of shoes, each one a testament to a child's fleeting moments, rests quietly in the shadows of the corner. Ava felt a tightening in her stomach. Upon one of the beds, a delicate pink ribbon was tied to a post, whispering secrets of forgotten dreams. Another bore the remnants of crayon marks, etched into the wall behind it, a silent testament to the chaos that once unfolded, lines etched in silence. "Oh my God," Ava breathed, her voice trembling with emotion. Yet what struck her with greater force than anything else was the camera perched in the corner, its red light flickering dully at them. Ava. Action. Recording in progress. Observing. This was not merely a singular act of malice. This was methodical. Brooks knelt low, his fingers brushing against the dust-laden floor as he unearthed a small stuffed rabbit from the shadows beneath one of the beds. This was more than just Maddie. 3, perhaps even more. Forensic units must be summoned to this scene tonight. He stood there, his face a mask of seething rage. "We're tearing the veil apart." Ava felt the familiar vibration of her phone nestled within the confines of her coat. Dr. Selena Moore. "They've arrested Amanda Lane," she declared without hesitation. In a moment fraught with tension, she found herself ensnared in a web of deceit, attempting to extract a substantial amount of money from a shell account tied to Gregory's business. "Has she spoken yet?" Ava inquired. "She's been talking non-stop," Selena remarked, her voice laced with a mix of exasperation and intrigue. She insisted she had no part in it. Yet the truth slipped through her fingers. She claimed it was she who orchestrated the arrangements. Gregory was merely the custodian of the place. She bore the weight of the product on her shoulders. Item. The word sent a shiver through Ava, her fingers quaking around the phone as if it were a fragile lifeline. As they emerged from the shadows of the basement, Brooks made the call to the Discovery, drawing in the weight of official resources to confront what he had come to recognize as a likely trafficking site. Yet Ava's instincts remained in turmoil. Upon returning home, she remained near Maddie, who had fallen silent once more, yet held on to Ranger as if he were the sole anchor preventing her from drifting away. Dr. Moore stepped into the room, a determined look etched on his face as he engaged in a tense hour-long debate with child services, passionately arguing that Maddie's true safety lay in remaining right where she was. Not this evening, not after all that she had endured. As Ava ventured into the cool night air just after midnight, her phone vibrated once more, breaking the stillness around her. Unfamiliar digits. A solitary message emerged. Her true mother is on her way. She stands amidst a crowd, yet the weight of solitude clings to her like a shadow. Ava's eyes widened as she read the message, the color draining from her face like a sunset swallowed by the night. She had always been aware that Amanda was not Maddie's biological mother. At long last, the truth emerged from the shadows, a revelation that had lingered in uncertainty for far too long. The door groaned ominously as it swung shut behind her. Ranger emerged cautiously, his limp evident yet his senses sharp and aware. He inhaled deeply, the air thick with tension, and let out a low, menacing growl. The fog had come back, dense and twisting around the streetlights as if they were grasping hands, and there was someone out there. The wind off the lake murmured ominous secrets through the towering pines surrounding AVA Collins' isolated cabin. The first light of dawn had just begun to creep over the horizon. The sky hung heavy, a washed-out canvas of gray. As a black SUV crept to a halt at the end of the gravel drive, the engine hummed, a low and steady pulse. Headlights darkened, waiting in the shadows. Within the confines of the house, a shadow stirred. The once noble German shepherd, now bearing the scars of a tumultuous past and known only as Ranger, raised his head and let out a growl, deep and resonant. Maddie Lane, just 7, had shed the remnants of her former self. With a quick, instinctive motion, she ducked beneath the kitchen table, her sketchbook held tightly in her grasp. Ava felt the weight of the world pressing against her, the unspoken truth hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. She didn't need to gaze outside to grasp the significance of it all. The trap lay in wait, and she stood poised, anticipation coursing through her veins, with a determined grace. She shifted the curtain's angle, just enough to catch a glimpse beyond. From the SUV emerged 2 figures. One a man clad in a sharp gray suit, the other a woman clutching a clipboard, her lanyard proudly displaying the emblem of the Department of Family Services. Yet Ava had glimpsed the true badge. These were mere illusions. She emerged into the chill, a serene composure enveloping her like a cloak. Miss Collins, the woman, made her entrance. "We have arrived to take custody of Maddie Lane in accordance with Court Order 487C for an emergency reassignment. A decree from the court." Ava arched an eyebrow, a flicker of intrigue dancing in her gaze. "Which judge are we speaking of?" The woman paused, a fleeting moment of uncertainty gripping her heart. Judge Halberd stood resolute, a figure of authority cloaked in the weight of his decisions. "Curious, isn't it? Halberd has been laid to rest for 3 long years." The man advanced, his footfall echoing with purpose. "We seek no conflict. Simply bring the girl." Shadow edged closer to Ava, his muscles coiled tight, a low growl rumbling from deep within him. Within the confines of the house, 3 officers huddled behind the living room wall, weapons at the ready, their body cameras capturing every tense moment. Detective Raymond Brooks offered a brief, sharp nod to the district attorney's liaison, who was intently listening to the audio streaming from a concealed microphone tucked away in Ava's coat. The sting was palpable. Ava folded her arms, a storm brewing in her eyes. "You crafted a false badge, commandeered a vehicle that wasn't yours, and arrived uninvited at the home of a protected witness. I've got to admit, that's audacious." "You don't want this to end poorly," the man cautioned, his hand disappearing into the depths of his coat. Yet, fate denied him that opportunity. The front door exploded inward. Officers pouring out like a tempest, weapons drawn, their voices a cacophony of urgent commands. In a heartbeat, the two impostors found themselves disarmed, their wrists bound, and their bodies forced against the unforgiving, frozen earth. Shadow lingered close to Maddie, obscuring her sight. Brooks loomed over the bound figure, a tense silence hanging in the air. Your presence here has just tacked on another decade to your fate. You'd best begin to speak up. Under the weight of scrutiny. The woman faltered first. The fraudulent transfer was orchestrated by the legal team of Gregory Lane. Amanda Lane had given her approval for the plan, convinced that Ava was far too unpredictable to maintain custody. Yet, the profound reality came undone in an instant. They had not come for a mere transfer. They had come for a kidnapping. By noon, Ava found herself seated within the solemn walls of the Marion County Courthouse. The courtroom exuded a sense of solemnity, its modest decor contrasting sharply with the gravity of the proceedings. DCF officials, law enforcement, and a handful of reporters filled the space, each person acutely aware of the weight of the moment. Maddie perched next to Ava, a silent shadow at her feet, his service vest newly fastened, ready for the unfolding drama of the day. She had grown accustomed to the creak of doors swinging open, no longer flinching at the sound. She had released her grip on the notebook, no longer seeing it as her only salvation. Yet her fingers continued to glide over the leather binding, a habitual motion steeped in unawareness. Across the aisle, Gregory Lane was ensconced between two lawyers, his posture unyielding, jaw clenched in silent tension. Amanda Lane maintained a stoic facade, her gaze darting restlessly between the looming exit and the imposing judge's bench. Judge Olivia Chambers, her keen gaze unwavering at 67, summoned the room to attention, her tolerance for drama non-existent. The prosecution unveiled a compelling narrative, a tapestry woven with encrypted messages, financial documents, GPS trails, and the pivotal testimony of Amanda Lane, who, in a desperate plea for mercy, stepped into the light as a state's witness. Yet, it was the haunting footage from Ava's cabin that clinched the matter. Gregory's hired thugs masquerading as government officials, his wealth fueling each calculated step. Ava observed the judge's face cloud over, the weight of realization settling in as the fragments aligned. Then silence enveloped the courtroom. Judge Chambers cast a piercing glance at Maddie. "Miss Lane, do you have any words to share?" Maddie remained motionless, a statue caught in the throes of an unspoken turmoil. Then she rose to her feet. She rose from her chair, distancing herself from Ava, and turned to confront the bench. "I want to stay with Ava and Shadow," she declared, her voice a fragile thread, yet unwavering. "They hold no fear for me. They speak the truth. They have become my sanctuary, my refuge in this tumultuous world." The judge's eyelids fluttered, a palpable wave of emotion washing over him. "Thank you. Maddie." Her eyes flickered toward the lawyers, then returned to the girl, a silent tension hanging in the air. The court hereby bestows upon AVA Collins the full temporary guardianship, accompanied by a strong recommendation for an expedited review of the adoption process. Gregory and Amanda Lane find themselves ensnared in a web of federal scrutiny, held in custody as the shadows of trafficking, obstruction, and conspiracy loom over them, awaiting the inevitable charges that will unfold in this unfolding drama. The gavel struck the sound block with finality. Outside, a throng of reporters surged up the steps, but Ava stood firm, wrapping her coat around Maddie as a protective barrier against the chaos. Silence enveloped the room, heavy and unyielding. They strode past the microphones, the rain pouring down around them, and slipped into the waiting car, a moment heavy with unspoken tension. That night, within the confines of the lakeside home, Ava kindled a fire in the hearth, its flames dancing like whispers of secrets long held. A shadow lay coiled upon the rug, a silent witness to the unfolding drama of the room. At last, his body surrendered to the stillness. Maddie lingered by his side, her fingers gliding over the fabric of his coat, a silent ritual steeped in unspoken tension. Ava observed them from the kitchen, the comforting aroma of cocoa simmering on the stove. As Maddie placed the mugs on the table, her gaze lifted, revealing a moment suspended in time. Her eyes held a weary depth, brimming with unspoken stories. "I no longer require the notebook," she declared, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of finality. Ava took her place beside her, the air thick with unspoken words and tension that crackled like electricity between them. "You don't have to let it go," Maddie said, her voice steady yet filled with an undercurrent of emotion. "I simply require it to remain silent." Ava remained silent. With a swift motion, she enveloped the girl in her arms, shadow leaning in, a silent witness to their shared moment. Once the tempest had subsided, in the stillness that followed, they uncovered what their hearts had longed for the most: neither salvation nor retribution. Kin.